a lot of fear, a lot of questions, and a lot of need to kind of talk and share. This is not an official meeting of the City Council. This is what I call a special meeting of the Neighborhood Watch. And the Neighborhood Watch normally meets on the second Thursday of each month, and they meet at 6 o'clock in here. And as Sergeant Mayor will tell you, we've been running really low. We've had maybe 2 or 3 people at some of the meetings. And so one of the things I hope we can get out of this with so many people here is maybe to, at the end of this, talk about how we can have a rebirth of the Neighborhood Watch, have people going around in the neighborhoods and doing all of that. But that's for a little further. Right now what I wanted to do was to take this opportunity to let various people here kind of talk through what we've gone through recently. I've invited, and Sheriff Volpe has shown up along with Sergeant Mayor, and they'll be talking about things from the police standpoint. And we also have Daniel Regan, who's a minister, and Caleb Ott, who is a medical health specialist. Okay. Why don't you share with them? I'm sorry.
I work for McLeod Healthcare and Dunsmuir Community Health Center, and I'm also part of the Dunsmuir Community Care Team and a couple different things.
So I wanted to make sure that this meeting is not about trying to solve the problem of crime in general. It's dealing with looking at our community right now, asking the question, where are we in terms of crime? And coincidentally, if you go back to the City Council webpage and you look at the February 15th meeting of the City Council, that was just about a month ago, and Sheriff Volpe came and spoke for 40 minutes. You can access that video online, and you can see that he spent 40 minutes going over every number you can think of, talking about the various crimes, the various things, and I think you'll probably touch a little bit on that. The point I'm trying to make is that I was a little disappointed that there are some people that think there's a conspiracy by the city paper and sheriff's department to keep people from knowing what's happening in the city. That could not be further from the truth. And the city works hand in hand with the sheriff's department. The one thing people have to realize is that in comparison to cities like Mount Shasta and Weed, where they have their own police department, we are working with a memorandum of agreement which gets renewed regularly, and the sheriff's department serves as our police force. So when we're talking about what's going on, is there enough being done, what can I do to make myself and my neighborhood safer, that's what I'd like to talk about here today. And I also want to give everyone, when we get to that point, to come up and stand up and share your thoughts and share your feelings and share your fears. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Volpe, and I'll give you the platform to kind of respond, first of all, with what took place with the particular home invasion and how you see that as part of a larger pattern.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Could you stand up, just right there to the microphone if you would?
Okay. All right.
I just want to make sure everyone can hear.
Okay, everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. All right. Again, everybody in the back?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, let me explain briefly what occurred. First of all, thank you for being here. If you weren't here, that would be an indicator you didn't care about public safety. So being here demonstrates that, and I greatly appreciate it. As you know, I think just about everybody heard about this this terrible crime that occurred. In the day in question, we think it happened somewhere around 5:30 a.m. And what happened is this young man, a 17-year-old, and this is the information. I'm going to give you more than we've given anybody else, and I'm probably going to give you a lot more than what the media has, but I'm just going to be kind of upfront and honest with you about what happened so that you have a little bit more knowledge. But the information we received was this young man was evidently at a residence the morning of this crime occurred, and somewhere in the early morning hours he allegedly was at this residence, allegedly was using controlled substances, in this case allegedly marijuana and some concentrated cannabis. According to the information we got in the investigation was he was acting in such a way that prompted the persons that would allow him to stay at the house, made him leave. So unfortunately, when he left, what's he doing? He's wandering the streets. You know, I've been attending the Mental Health Care Coalition here in Dunsmuir, and really we have some real challenges, not just in Dunsmuir, but throughout Siskiyou County. There's a lot of kids out there that are kind of aimless. They get into alcohol or they get into drugs, and some kids don't have a home. And that's an issue in Dunsmuir.
And the chair will be there in a moment. Ladies?
So we have a recipe for disaster. We got a 17-year-old who's out at night with friends. He's not getting rest to go to school because he's not going to school. A lot of times parents are challenged, and evidently the family was in the process. When we talked to the mother, she was in Reno, so they had, you know, the family wasn't really in touch with what the kid was doing, according to the information we got. So there's some challenges there. And so you have a 17-year-old walking the streets at night. And as we go along, I'm going to give you some suggestions as we go along to try to help yourself not become victimized like this poor woman did. So he's wandering the streets, it's cold, he really doesn't have a home to go to. Pardon me? So he doesn't have a home to go home to because talking to the probation department, he evidently had been asked to leave his home because of his actions and the actions allegedly of his girlfriend. So he's wandering the streets, it's cold, so what's he doing? He's looking for a place to either a house or a shelter. And what's he do? He finds a car that's unlocked, so he gets in the car. So please lock your cars and lock your doors to your homes all the time, even during the day. So he gets in this car, and for a while he stays in the car, and then he decides to leave that car, and he ends up on Butterfly. Now, he finds another car that's not far from the victim's home, and this car is unlocked, it's got the keys in it, and it's got some tools and other valuables in the car. So please, again, I got to emphasize, protect yourself and your property and don't take anything for granted. Lock your vehicles and don't leave anything of value in your vehicles. So at some point he took this tool belt out of the car. We don't know why he didn't take that car because the keys were in it. And some of us who've been in Siskiyou County a long time, we're more trusting. And it seems like the older we get, you know, the more trusting we are, because there was a time when you didn't have to even lock your doors in a lot of our communities. That's not the case anymore. So he takes the toolbox and he somehow gets in the victim's garage, and he's looking around, and at some point he goes to the rear of the house. He removes a window that kind of slides, and he enters the house. And you've got an elderly occupant of the house who's alone, who is in her room, and with the door closed, and then she opens her door because she hears noises and encounters the individual. Now, I don't know why he did what he did. I don't know what was motivating him. I don't know if the drugs he alleged to have consumed had anything to do. I don't know. But I do know that we're seeing a pattern really in the whole county, especially with some of these troubled kids, especially if they get on alcohol or drugs, and especially if they're homeless, because they have a tendency to be more desperate, and adults too. So during the course of this encounter, he was not just there to get shelter. And at some point, he attempted to strangle the elderly victim, and at some point, he tried to sexually assault the elderly victim, according to the evidence that we have. Now, throughout this whole ordeal, I think her actions were extraordinary because she kind of kept her cool, and at one point she feigned unconsciousness, and he went off and kind of was rummaging through the house, you know, looking for things to take. And then he went back, and you know, she was assaulted again. At some point, after this is all done, he decides to leave in her vehicle, and he also obtains a bank card. So, and she gives him the PIN. Now, you can't fault her, you know, for providing that information because, you know, her life was threatened, and certainly, you know, she could have been seriously injured or killed. So, he goes out and gets in her vehicle, and he can't figure out how to start the vehicle. So he goes and gets her, takes her out, show me how to start the vehicle, gets the vehicle going, and then forces her to drive him about a block, and then kicks her out of the vehicle. Thank goodness didn't harm her any further, and then left with the vehicle. Now, then he went to the bank, and we got help from the bank. And what happened during this time, let me just advise you that we really didn't know what happened for sure because the call came out as a burglary, and when we didn't get a lot of details. So my deputies responded and found out very quickly that, hey, this was more than a burglary. You have a home invasion robbery, really. You have more than a simple burglary. Because he's taking items from her through force or fear. You certainly have a burglary, you have a theft, you have a sexual assault potentially, and certainly you have you know, attempt murder, because any 17-year-old that's going to, you know, attempt to strangle, you know, someone my age or her age, or you know, most of you in this room, it's attempted murder. So we identified that we have a more serious array of crimes. Plus, in California, you know, you have a false imprisonment if you hold somebody against their will. When there's movement involved, in this case there was movement in the vehicle, so you have a kidnapping. So you got some pretty heavy-duty offenses. Now,
excuse me, if you'd like to come over, as long as you don't get in the way of that camera, there's room to kind of stand over there, because I got a feeling there'll be more people coming in after you.
Okay.
Take a moment and rearrange, because we're very full, but we want you to be taken care of.
You can sit on the floor.
That would be an understanding, Sheriff. Go ahead. You're welcome.
Come on, Dan.
Just stay out of the way of that camera over there. Don't touch the camera.
Don't touch the camera.
Don't touch the camera. I'm yelling around.
Okay. Back towards.
so we have deputies to discover that there is some more serious crimes that have been committed by this perpetrator, allegedly based on the information we had at the scene. So we didn't have a very good description of the suspect at first because, you know, justifiably so, the victim was traumatized and we weren't getting a lot of information. Kind of vague. And we didn't have a good description of her vehicle, but shortly after that, we got enough information where we had a general description of him in the vehicle, and we couldn't find the vehicle, so we put out a regional be on the lookout to all law enforcement agencies, not only in our county, but in the region. Now, most of the time when these type of egregious crimes occur, the suspects have a tendency to leave the area, because staying in the area usually is not wise because they get apprehended. We didn't find the suspect immediately, so we had the be on the lookout broadcast to all agencies. And then we called our major crimes unit. We have a major crimes unit. There are a bunch of detectives who are very, pretty talented people, and a forensic technician. We called the forensic technician to get down to the crime scene, to analyze the crime scene, to see if we could get any more evidence from the crime scene. And the detectives came down here and started assisting the deputies, who did a really good job developing the preliminary snapshot of what actually happened. Another thing is, because he had the bank card, one of our first efforts to identify the suspect, go to the bank. Well, the bank has procedures, and you just can't go in there and say, hey, can I see your cameras? But we sorted all that out, and we finally got an image of the possible perpetrator, because we got a possible snapshot. He was wearing a hoodie, tried to hide his face, and one of my detectives said, hey, that guy looks kind of young. Maybe we ought to go up to the high school. Maybe they know him. Well, the detective goes up to the high school, and the high school helped us tremendously, because I think we know who this individual is. So we got a name, we got a better description of the vehicle, and a license plate number. Now, at this point, we had to make a decision. We have a code red, or reverse 911 system that we could use. Some of the reasons we didn't use that is at that particular time, and it may have been a good idea to use it in retrospect, but the reason we didn't use it is we had reason to believe the individual left the neighborhood, would probably left town like most criminals do, and when we got his name, we didn't want to, usually you don't want to tip the individual off, you want to try to apprehend the individual. But that's probably the one thing when some of us were talking, my management team got together, that code red reverse 911 system is something we could have used, and probably we'll use in the future. But again, it kind of depends on the situation, and we wanted to catch this individual. As you know, we got the call somewhere around just before 7:30 in the morning. The actual series of crimes were committed allegedly sometime after 5:30 in the morning. And then a little after 3, about 3:14 in the afternoon, one of my deputies spied the vehicle that matched the description of the vehicle that was stolen from the victim. And there was a teenager, a female in the vehicle, and a male. And the male tried to walk off and walk away. And we drove up there. A detective sergeant showed up, and Deputy Burns successfully, without incident, arrested both the male suspect and the female. An investigation afterward, we determined that we didn't think the female teenager had anything to do with the crime. It was just kind of an incidental thing where he evidently picked her up. And afterwards, we conducted, we completed our crime scene investigation. We always have protocols when these kind of things happen. To take care, our main priority was obviously to safeguard and to protect the victim and to get her care, medical care. We have protocols to follow to make sure that we gather evidence in the event that this assault occurred, and we had like DNA evidence. We wanted to make sure that was collected, and we made sure that that she was okay and that she got the care that she needed. Now, as you know, when we arrested the juvenile suspect, we eventually released the female teenager. We arrested him, and because he's a juvenile, we couldn't release. We don't release the name. He was charged with home invasion robbery, attempted murder, sexual assault, burglary, auto theft, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and I'm probably forgetting a couple, but this individual...
Actually, a senior.
Pardon me?
Crime against a senior.
Right, elder abuse.
Elder abuse, yes.
Elder abuse is always included when you have a elder of her age, but we charge him with every conceivable offense. We booked him in the Charlie Bird Youth Correctional Facility up in Wairika. Right now, they're kind of transitioning into kind of a different modus operandi or different method to handle juveniles. And what we've been doing is he was transported down to Tehama County because we have a contract with Tehama County, so he's down there right now. And you know, what happens in these cases is a full investigation. The whole report is submitted to the Siskiyou County Juvenile Court, which is basically the Superior Court, and the district attorney looks it over, works with probation, and then they decide what charges are going to be filed. Now, because he was going to be 18 in October, it's possible that he could be tried as an adult because of the sophistication and the heinous nature of these offenses. Now, I'll take your questions in a minute, but I just want to tell you that I look upon this anytime a horrendous crime like that is committed is a concern to us all, to neighbors, to city officials, and certainly to us in law enforcement. Our focus, and I don't think any law enforcement agency is going to do everything exactly right and everything perfect. But the good news is that we relentlessly pursued this suspect, developed investigative leads, and were able to make an arrest in the case. So your community is safer because that individual is off the streets. Now, I've had conversations with people on the Mental Health Care Coalition that we've been meeting regularly here. I just talked to the Chief Probation Officer in the county. There's a lot more that we have to do as law enforcers, as public officials, to deal with the causation factors that lead to these type of serious incidents. So we still have, you know, some work to do, also in the investigation. And for example, we are going to form we're going to get some subject matter experts together in the county and figure out how we can identify potential problem kids, you know, in advance. Because in this case, for example, the kid's not going to school. He should be going to school. Evidently, one of the parents checked him out, and they're supposedly in process of possibly leaving. But the fact of the matter is, he wasn't in school. He should have been. So we're looking at energizing and putting some teeth into truancy-related, you know, laws and enforcement in the county. We gotta do something about the drugs, the alcohol. And really there are three things that we're working on in that regard. Is we can't just enforce, we can't just arrest the kids and throw them in juvenile hall or if they're adults in jail. We gotta have prevention. One of the things that we, out of our Mental Health Care Coalition, is right now we restarted DARE a couple weeks ago. We have a DARE, which is anti-drug. The instructors are specially trained, and they go into the schools and they deal with things like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, tobacco abuse, bullying, and other adverse behaviors to get you in trouble or make it more uncomfortable for other kids, you know, to survive in a school environment. The very next place we're going after Scott Valley, right now we're in Scott Valley, we come down here at Dunsmuir. Before this happened, we had made arrangements with your principal, who's been very supportive in the elementary school, and we're going to get into the elementary school with the DARE to try to help work with these kids. We're also going to work at the high school, and then we're going to go to McLeod after that. So that We're going to work with probation. We're going to have to work with behavioral health services. We're going to work with the district attorney's office because we got to, and unfortunately, we got to go after the parents and the kids, but we got to go after the parents to say, look, if your kid's not going to school, it's your responsibility to make sure he or she is in school. Now, does that mean they're not going to commit crimes? No, absolutely not. But at least if they're in school, we got great teachers, we got great administrators, we got great mentors, and at least if they're in school, their activities, at least during the school day, you're going to be directed towards more positive behaviors and activities, and they're less likely to get in trouble, because when they're wandering the streets and not in school, obviously they're more prone to criminal behavior. I had a meeting with Kermit Walters, the superintendent of the Siskiyou County Unified School District, and he's with us because right now we're working on some strategies not only to deal with active shooter type situations, but also the drugs and the alcohol and the tobacco we do have in our schools. And I can tell you, your supervisor, Ed Valenzuela, he's one of the greatest supporters. We have great support from our Siskiyou County Board of Supervisors. He pulled me aside and said, look, I don't mind going after drug offenders, but you better get the education in there. He was the biggest proponent of that. I said, I agree with you 100%. Because really we need three things when it comes to the drugs and the alcohol. You have to have prevention programs, you have to have enforcement, but you have to have treatment options as well. And your board member couldn't be a better supporter of law enforcement, and those three activities have to take place if we're going to impact the troubled kids out there. And I don't know, do you have anything to add? I'll ask Sergeant Merrill or Captain Halpin if he has anything to add, and I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions you have. Another thing is, while I'm thinking about it, is we have 3.5 positions funded by Dunsmuir. And we're very grateful to have this contract. The Dunsmuir City Council and the mayor and the administrator, the city manager, they have been very supportive of public safety, just like Supervisor Valenzuela is to law enforcement as a board of supervisor member. They've been great. Well, we have 3.5 positions. That's not exactly a huge force. So we got to have support. One of the things I've asked Sergeant Merrill to do, and he's doing a great job here, but one of the things we need your help on is we got to energize Neighborhood Watch. You got to be our eyes and ears. And one of the things I talked to the Allison Giannini, our probation chief, we're going to address in fact, we're going to talk to the board tomorrow about what we've done to improve security in schools. We're going to talk about the jail project. But I talked to her tonight, and we're going to address the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. But one of the things we have to do is all work together to identify these problem kids so that we can somehow get a hold of them and get them some help before they reach this point, like this kid, where he commits basically offenses that if he's tried as an adult, he could spend the rest of his life in prison, and or a great number of years in prison, if nothing else. And we have a lot of things going on in the county. We have a community corrections partnership, which the Board of Supervisors supports 100%, where we have alternate sentencing programs. We can't keep everybody in jail or the juvenile hall, but especially the jail, because it's full and it has nothing but felons. We can't even keep misdemeanor violations in there, but the board has supported us. It looks like we may in the future get a new jail a few years down the road if everything works out. But this community correction partnership, we're trying everything to do to bring programming and services and drug treatment and alcohol treatment and education, and try to give these kids and also adults tools so they could be more successful on the outside, because we cannot throw everybody in jail anymore and throw away the key. We can't do that because we don't have the money and we don't have the beds anyway. So, but we need your help with Neighborhood Watch. You gotta be our eyes and ears, and Dunsmuir could be the model, city to do that. And we'll help you organize it, but if we just get some volunteers to go out there and just report, observe and report. You don't intervene, you observe and report. Yes, sir.
You mentioned
Before we do that, what I'd like to do before we get to questions is I'd like to kind of make sure that we focus right now on one thing, and that is questions about the arrest. Because I'd like to work the other folks in here to talk about other aspects. But instead of spending this whole time, everyone getting up and spending 3 minutes just talking about whatever, let's right now, you can come back later and talk. Right now, if you have any questions for the sheriff about the arrest, please go over there, put your name, and speak here.
And, yeah, and also,
I'll let Councilor Shanta go ahead.
And Mr. Mayor, also, I have crime stats from last year and this year and the year before. And there are a lot of crime, although crime, generally speaking, is going up in California, both violent and property crime, especially property crime. Actually, the trends in Dunsmuir have not been that unfavorable. And I can tell you what crimes are going up. A lot of crimes are going down in Dunsmuir, and that probably has a lot to do with, the leadership. Some has to do with law enforcement. I think we have a lot of collaborative efforts, like this mental health care coalition. You have the Family Resource Center. You have a lot of engaged officials that are really trying to help the city. We had a great Board of Supervisor representative. But a lot of the trends here are more favorable than they are in the other parts of the county. I can elaborate on that later if you want me to.
So, any questions about the arrest itself? Mari?
Sergeant Lopi, I'm Mari Shanta. I happen to live on Butterfly, just a few doors down from where this happened. First of all, I want to thank you and your deputies, how professional they were. In the morning we all got interviewed, and how fast you apprehended the assailant. I have a couple of questions, because the majority of the people that live on Butterfly are elderly, and we live by ourselves. We wanted to know how he, and I think you probably actually answered that, of how he gained entry into the house, and whether this was a crime of opportunity or whether the house was targeted for some reason.
We have no reason to, that's a very good question, and thank you for your comments as well. We have no reason to believe that she was targeted. We have no reason to believe that they even knew one another. I think it was a crime of opportunity. However, we have no indication that she left the door unlocked or anything like that, and he did use an instrument to jimmy that sliding portion of the door or window, and illustrates the point that check your homes, make sure your windows can be locked and secure, make sure your doors are secure, make sure you have deadbolts, and make sure you have good locks. Consider an alarm system, consider lighting, consider inexpensive cameras. A dog helps, to give you early warning.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, if you would up there, so we're recording. Okay, never mind. You can sit there. Next much, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Deputy Spagnola, question. You said you let the female go, the girl that was reported.
Yes.
Was this like a team thing effort? Why did you guys let her go? Was she part of it?
Well, she was arrested initially. Well, first of all, she was in a stolen vehicle, and we didn't know if she had any involvement. The investigation revealed that we don't think that she had any involvement in the actual crime. She was not seen in the neighborhood. He evidently picked her up, and that's what our investigation revealed. Now, we're still continuing the investigation. If we get some additional information, that's one of the things I ask of all of you. If somebody knows any information that could be helpful to us, please let us know. But as far as we know, we don't want to keep a 17-year-old, a juvenile in juvenile hall or incarcerated, send them out of county unless we have reasonable cause to believe she actually committed a crime. And we don't think she knew that the vehicle was stolen either.
And as for him, have any of you guys talked to him as to why he did this? I mean, it was pretty horrific. I mean,
Well,
it was helpless.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. He was, I can tell you, he was kind of up and down during you know, the questioning. I can't go into a lot of details,
Right.
but the explanations he gave really didn't make sense. And I don't even know if he understood the seriousness of the totality of the charges and the rather significant circumstances he found himself in. And again, I don't know if I don't know the drugs may have had an impact, but we don't know. We just don't know why he did what he did. Now, the explanations he gave, I really can't go into detail, but they didn't really make sense. And I can tell you that the indicators were that he kind of had a pretty callous attitude about the whole situation. It was a lot of times you get a young kid that commits a crime and they just make a dumb mistake and they realize what they did and they're very remorseful.
Yeah.
We didn't see that in this individual. No, ma'am.
I hope he doesn't get off.
You're welcome, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of questions. The first thing, has the individual been in trouble with law enforcement in the past? Not in this magnitude, but is he had a troubled past?
Well, we had contacts. I don't know if you had.
The more we come to know and understand, there were other instances that he was involved in that we hadn't yet discovered who the person was, in fact. That this particular case is now shedding light on other ones. So yes, in some way, being that young, that historical isn't that long, of course. So there have been other issues that, I don't want to say we're leading up to this, but we're certainly other concerns that have been developing as well.
Okay.
And one thing, ma'am, I'll mention is that we actually found evidence on his person that linked him to the crime, and he also had in his possession other stolen items that we think were not taken from the victim's home. We think that he may have been involved in at least one other crime, and we're trying to sort that out.
And leading up to that, after that question is how can we as a community get a petition going to see if there are people that are willing to sign to say that we would like him tried as an adult? Because this is, to me, is just, it's asinine. I'm sorry, I feel for his family, I do, but it's scary. And it's, I mean, I've lived here my whole life. These attacks are awful. I mean, they're horrible. And it hurts me to think about this stuff happening here.
I don't think there's anything wrong with any citizen, and I appreciate your concern, writing the district attorney and urging him, to at least examine that feasibility. You know, our DA is very, very competent, been there a long time, and again, they look at, when a young adult, when a juvenile commits just an egregious felony like that, or a series of felony crimes, it had a level of sophistication, callousness, and total disregard for that victim that most 17-year-olds wouldn't have. It's more like an adult behavior, unfortunately. And I think that your input to the district attorney would be accepted, and I'm sure that he would be open to that. Now, again, he has to work with the courts to make a determination like that, but I think it's possible, and certainly your input should be very important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'll be right back.
You know what, you had said that you had seen that there was other stolen property that you had seen. We had our car broken into in front of our house on Shasta Avenue, and a computer was taken out. And it was my tenant, but her car was accidentally unlocked. and it was in her trunk hidden. And I'm just thinking if it was the opportunistic opening of a car, if that would be something that, I mean, how would somebody know to find that computer? I mean, is there a way of?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I will ask Sergeant Barrow to maybe get a list of unaccounted for items, and perhaps he could share those with the citizens. That's another thing that I ask you, please, if you have valuables, record serial numbers, take a video or take photos of your valuables, put get a little 795 etcher and put your driver's license number or some identifying number on that item and record that. Keep a list, pictures, video, whatever you can have, because if you are victimized, it makes our job easier, because then we recover that stolen property, we can identify it as your property, and we could return it to you. A lot of times the DA is really good about district attorney about us returning property, especially of value, but especially real valuable items. Make sure that you have those items marked and recorded in some way, even if you just put it on a list, because we need that. And you'd be surprised, people go, well, I don't know what's missing. Oh yeah, I had a couple guns, I don't know what the numbers were. And if they're not in the system as registered, then how are we supposed to put them in the system? And a lot of this property is recovered. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I live down the street from the victim, and this is not a nice kid. I took down some pepper spray to her the next day, and her face is terribly bruised. I mean, she's got a huge bruise on one side of her face, and the rest of her face is all bruised, and her eyes are bloodshot because he strangled her. I mean, he really beat her badly, and for someone to do this to a 70-year-old woman, there's something wrong with this guy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
You're absolutely right. Yes, sir.
My name is Rick Chandler. I live on Butterfly Avenue. I want to thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
I think that most people want to know basically one thing. Why? Is this something that was possibly ongoing with this young man, or was it an anomaly? And in the interest of information sharing and possible early intervention, did he have a history of either mental or emotional problems, particularly violence? And could the school have shared that if he did have a history? And secondarily, is this something that might have occurred naturally, where he just, at one point in life, from natural imbalance, just snapped? Or is it possible that you have a pending toxicology report that may show that he had something on the order of some drug that he was supposed to be taking to alleviate an emotional imbalance, and that he may have not been taking his medication, or possibly on a medication that is known to cause people to have spontaneous violent outbursts?
I think that that's a great series of questions. I think the important thing is we're making progress. I think as a county, we're still revising those techniques, tactics, and procedures to, one, identify problem kids, two, intervene and plug them into the system somehow where they can get counseling or some kind of support. We have faith-based organizations. Not all of these are public. We have a number of organizations willing to help. This mental health care coalition we've been conducting here, great resources are being coordinated, and we're collaborating and trying to prevent these type of incidents from happening. I think the schools here, you have excellent schools. I've had at the high school very cooperative, and Helen at the elementary school. That's why we're getting Gare in there. They have been extremely supportive of us and our efforts. We have to take it up a notch, and this is one of the things that we're trying to do, and the Board of Supervisors asked us to do, to protect our schools, we do some of the same things to protect our schools as we do to protect our communities. Like, we all know what happened in Florida. Well, how do you identify a kid like that? I'd like to think that wouldn't happen here. I think we would have intervened long before. But we have to somehow collaborate with the schools. We have to collaborate. The parents have to be part of the solution. A lot of times the parents, a single parent may be working, the parent may not be in that position. We have to have you as citizens. You see some kid going off the rails behavior-wise, please let somebody know so that we can try to intervene. That's one of the things the Mental Health Care Coalition, we're trying to do that. And we have behavioral health services. We have child protective services. We have adult protective services for the elderly. Just today, I asked Adult Protective Services to check out a case here in Dunsmuir that I got a business owner asked me to look into. So we're trying to get them to intervene. But we gotta be communicating, and whether it's Neighborhood Watch or the schools or our civic leaders, it's coaches, it's people out on the block. They got to report stuff. If you see something, you got to say something, and then it's up to us. It's our responsibility to take some kind of viable action. And one thing, I've been in law enforcement for 40 years. What's very frustrating to me is that drugs are a serious problem right now. I haven't seen drugs like this since the 70s when I first got into law enforcement. We got opioids, we got prescription drugs, we got heroin. We're seeing fentanyl. We have meth is a big problem. We have cocaine. We've even seen PCP on a limited basis here. And certainly we have a big problem with marijuana. Yes,
just to follow up on my question on toxicology reports, do you have any correlation of the types of drugs that are associated with violence? For example, I would expect that methamphetamines are known to be a stimulant that may, in large quantities, cause people to be extremely violent and act without any reason. On the other hand, opioids and their derivatives, or even marijuana, are not stimulants in that respect, and may not necessarily have that kind of violent impact in terms of their motivation. So do you have any correlation in numbers in terms of what promotes the more violent actions such as what we've seen here?
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right about central nervous stimulants like methamphetamine, crack cocaine. There's a greater propensity for, I think, crime because those are central nervous stimulants. And people get spun up for, sometimes 2 days at a time, and they're prone to very bizarre behavior and criminal behavior. When I was working in Los Angeles, PCP, crack cocaine, regular cocaine, those cause a lot of problems, especially PCP, which is a up or downer type of drug. However, right now there's a lot of scientific evidence to indicate this young man, if we substantiate what he said, he had marijuana seems to be less harmful to adult populations that consume it. When you start using marijuana at an early age, there's scientific studies indicate that there's a greater propensity for psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, because when a kid is growing up in the early teens, the brain is still forming. So it messes up the brain, the THC in marijuana. So you have a greater tendency for these type of incidents to occur. Also, what happens is smoking marijuana may, depending on the THC levels, because THC levels range from 10 to 35% or more in regular marijuana. In our county, most of the time it's over 20%. So that THC level, the potency that gives the people the high is very high. When you talk about concentrates, this kid claimed he was using concentrates. Dabbing, or the wax, is made through honey oil, which is a concentrated form of marijuana shake, and they synthesize it with things like propane, and it comes out as kind of like a hashish oil type substance, and it ranges from 60 to 95% strength. Now the problem is that when it's used in a wax or dabbing, it's very it's high concentrate. So depending on the dosage, it could be very, very harmful to that individual and cause them, because it's a psychotropic drug, could cause them to do things that perhaps they wouldn't normally do. And an example is that a lot of times this honey oil concentrate is used in edibles. And I don't know, he said he used wax, which is a concentrated form. Edibles, it could have 100 milligrams in like a brownie or cookie or some other edible. And unfortunately, the recommended dosage is 10 to 15 milligrams. And can you imagine what happens when you hit 100 or 200, 300, and you're 10 times the recommended dosage? So people have a greater tendency, because of the psychotropic nature of the drug, to act in a bizarre, out of control, and sometimes violent fashion. And studies also indicate that especially kids are more susceptible to that.
You had said that this young man had no remorse. And so if he had a psychotropic event and it became violent, it may be to his own nature that was just tipped over, not necessarily caused by the drug itself. And to that end, do you prioritize the arrest significance for harder drugs or lesser drugs as you see it in terms of arrests?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, for example, we have the Siskiyou Unified Major Investigation Team. I have a detective on that team. That team deals primarily with hard drugs, mostly methamphetamine, some heroin, opioids, some cocaine. They don't deal with marijuana hardly at all, but hard drugs. So yes, that is the major kind of push for us in the county. Also, I would say overall, meth, very harmful. It's very deleterious to one's health, one of the most destructive drugs I have ever seen in my career. Obviously, heroin can be harmful, because heroin, especially when mixed with fentanyl, makes heroin 50 times more potent than normally would be. And now we're getting carfentanil, which is more harmful than fentanyl. So yes, I would say we concentrate on the hard drugs. Now, the challenge we have in the county, though, is the marijuana is a lot more plentiful, and it's getting into schools more. I first came here as law enforcement. I was a CHP commander in Mount Shasta for 8 years. When I first got here in '92, during my tenure, we had 2 undercover operations in high schools. We had one in Wairika, and we had one in Mount Shasta. And they ended up making something like 28 to 30 arrests as a result of this undercover operation. And most of the drugs used marijuana. We had I think we had 1 case of possible meth. But what my main concern is the kids. Keeping these drugs out of the hands of kids, keeping alcohol away from the kids. And we don't want them to smoke tobacco either. And I think that we have a pretty balanced approach here in this county, because we have this task force. We also have a task force out of Reading that works a lot in the public lands for the illegal, because we have drug cartels running around the public lands. And we also have an internal task force that works with the district attorney on private property. But I think we have a balanced approach. And I can tell you, I recently had, sorry for droning on, but I just had a meeting with our new U.S. attorney for the Eastern District, and McGregor Scott. And I also had a discussion with Jeff Sessions from our U.S. attorney general. And he's going to help us concentrate on 3 issues in the North State: organized crime, violent crime, and interstate drug trafficking. So I think some good things are happening within the city. I think some good things are happening in the county. We got, and again, our board of supervisor members are very intent on solving these problems. I think we're making progress, but we got a ways to go.
Well, again, thank you very much, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sheriff, 2 more questions, and then I had something I'd like to move on to, if we could.
Okay.
I'd just like to speak to the question. Thank you for your thorough explanation, Sheriff. Current data as of October of 2017, according to a meta-analysis from the University of Montreal. A meta-analysis looks at all of the published peer-reviewed double-blind science available. Populations between 18 and 40, prolonged or even a minimal amount of exposure to cannabis produces 144 higher likelihood that a person will commit a violent crime. And I just find that very interesting as I'm sitting with a plan for recreational marijuana use on board behind me while we're discussing this case. The state of Colorado legalized recreational marijuana, and their crime rate, while the 30 largest cities in the United States have seen reduced crime in the last year, the state of Colorado is up in violent crime by 4%. So for every 100 murders in Colorado, there's now 4 more. Now that's not a causation, that's a correlation. But these are relevant numbers, and this is a relevant case as we move forward as a community in making decisions as to what we would want to have in our community. And again, I'm speaking to the simple matter of recreational use. I know there's a million opinions on that. This isn't it's not an argument from religion as a pastor. It's not an argument from morality. It's an argument from science. Thank you, Sheriff.
And actually, Sheriff, that was what I wanted to do, move on to introduce the other folks, but go ahead, Colleen.
Well, this is aside from, we're Craigview Drive, we have our own neighborhood watch. We get more out of you than Shasta County. We're just over the border in Shasta County. Would love to annex, that's another thing. We have a part of you guys' drug problem out in our area. And we would like to work with you guys to help you clear it up. And we'd also like to talk about mentoring. We also, I linked in with the Dunsmuir Neighborhood Watch. I don't know if you guys have to link back, but I'm also in with Costello, because Costello also has some of that drug problem,
right.
Sales problem, probably manufacturing problem, and I'm allergic to marijuana. So there are people who are allergic. They can kill me. I have to carry EpiPens now that it's been legalized.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Are you finished, ma'am?
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the challenges that Dunsmuir has, because we do have an element, and I'm sure that the vast majority of people are great down at Costello or down at Craigview Drive, but I've been getting reports of criminal activity out there. What happens is some of the purveyors of illegal drugs, they go back and forth between Shasta County and Siskiyou County, and our drug task force has dealt with this because, Shasta County has a great sheriff, Tom Basenko, but years ago they had a little bit more coverage, and everybody's short-handed. And we're looking at that area down there because of some reports that have come in, and we're trying to help Shasta County out. But there's no doubt there's a big problem down there just across the border, and some of that flows over and causes problems for us here.
We have problems where you guys had to come out there because it is an ongoing problem. Sales, they found needles all over, and
right.
At one point, I'm on the phone with our little sheriff down there, a nice guy. And he's down coming across the bridge out of Reading with a radio, his cell phone, and on a computer, trying to drive up a mountain road with a woman screaming her head off at the top of her lungs, trying to get a hold of you guys, and you guys on Highway Patrol are coming. And this is a major drug problem out there, but it's only a couple of houses. Everybody knows who they are.
Right.
We let them know we're watching them.
Right. We have offered to respond, and so is the highway patrol. So most of the time, we should be in a position to respond, and we help them out a lot. But,
They appreciate that a lot.
yeah, but we should link up our neighborhood watches and make sure that we exchange information, because that's what we need, information.
Costello also, Costello is very
Oh,
important.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 questions from the back, first of all. Anna?
The publicity to many of us is not happening in the newspaper with Dunsmuir. We're not getting reports, for example, of a violent dog on Shasta Avenue a year or 2 ago. We're not getting the burglary, like the big warehouse on Sacramento Avenue, wherever it was, they didn't tell us. It was busted with a lot of there are really obvious incidents, and we're not seeing. I'm not seeing them in the paper. I read it, and I want to see it on firsthand. I don't do Facebook because I want to see it in the newspaper. And if we could, Dunsmuir, please let our stuff be publicized so we know if our neighbors are getting.
I will ask if it's okay. Sorry to he's the man, but I'll ask Sergeant Merrow to summarize the more serious crimes and send them up, and we'll put them out. News releases. Yeah, a lot of that is, kind of shortage of, personnel, but we will do that for you.
Thank you.
And yeah.
We have, I'm at the bottom of Blackberry Hill. We have someplace at the top of Blackberry Hill that's there's a drug thing that goes up and down and around the streets, and it's known, and it's not pursued, and there's never enough evidence to go in, and we're concerned that it's not being tracked enough. That's just one incident. If we see the cars.
Right. Sometimes the volume, I'm not, there's really no excuse for that, but what I ask everybody to do, we do miss things sometimes, not trying to pretend that we have everything just so squared away that we never miss anything. If something's going on like that, you call, you have Sergeant Merrow, you have me, you have Captain Houtman, and you call us if you're not getting the service you get, and the Sergeant Merrow will make sure it happens, and he'll make sure we get the task force involved, and don't give up. Just keep, to tell you the truth, the squeaky wheel does kind of get the grease to the extent that just you stay after us and we'll take care of it.
I told Deputy Mike Gilley about the grow above Penny's Diner. There's a guy that looks like he's legal, or tanks, and diverting water from the streams, and we're just waiting.
Right. Well, can you email me that information and I'll make sure it's taken care of. Now I just want to tell you too, we had a problem with the marijuana complaints because in 1 year, we got over 400. Right. The planning department got over 800. We served 188 search warrants last year just on private property in Siskiyou County. Right. And you're right, we didn't keep up with it, but please call one of us. If you don't get feedback, you deserve feedback. Get a hold of Sergeant Merrow or one of us if he's not available, and we'll find out and make sure that your complaint gets some. Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
I apologize that we didn't get that.
Yes, sir.
Hi there. I know a lot of you. I'm Esther McClendon. I'm asking if there is a captain for, thank you, for the area of Florence Loop.
We were going to get to talking about that in a moment. We haven't gotten to that point yet. But
oh, you haven't? Okay, I just got it. Okay.
But I love what you're saying, so please don't.
Because I was going to say, I'll take that.
Good for you. That's exactly right.
I'm at the very beginning, so I could be the captain there if you want me to.
Thank you. For the volunteers, you're welcome to step forward.
Mayor, on this same topic, if I can just quickly go. I've been in the town over 20 years, and I've dealt with sheriffs, being a victim a couple times of some crimes. I was on Butterfly Street about 8:30. Your sergeant did a wonderful job. I happened to have business with our Councilor Mari Shanta, walked down the street, and he was right there asking her questions. When he talked to us, we mentioned that there were cameras on the house next door. He immediately got the phone number and the email address, he immediately contacted the person. It was exemplary work. I thought it was incredible work. It is the best I've ever seen, and I'm very thankful.
Thank you, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mark, appreciate it.
What I wanted to do was, you go over a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Okay, sure.
Since this was done by the teenager, do you plan on actually being harder on teenagers? Because right now, as a parent, as I see, you guys are really lax with teenagers. I have a growing one and I have a teenager and then I have a couple more. And it seems like they get away with a lot here. You know, and I understand it's a small town here, but if you teach them from, I know the gentleman you're talking about, you know, he's had a lot of issues. And if, I think you guys have been involved when he was younger, this probably would have never happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying it's your guys' fault or the parents' fault because it was his choice to do it. But I'm just wondering if you guys are going to start being a little harder on teenagers?
Yeah, I would say yes, with, but we also have to, we have to have a reason to intervene, and we also have to, juveniles have constitutional rights too. But I think if we talk better with, like our coalition, we talk, the schools communicating with us more, and you, the citizens, observe this behavior and you report it to us, then the good Sergeant Merrill will ensure that we pay more attention to these people and when we can. And we could, we could contact people, we could contact them just to talk. And another thing we're talking, that we are planning in the future, is if we identify problem kids, to figure out how maybe we could visit them once in a while and see how they're doing and try to help them and channel them into some positive endeavors. And you're absolutely right, we would like to intervene. I'd rather this kid be in school, in this great school we have here, and dealing with all of you instead of being in the juvenile hall facing possibly, multiple years, if not life in prison. And I don't think most people get better when they go into prison. And that's what we're trying to prevent. I think the mindset in the county is, amongst all our agencies, I think we're really trying to intervene. We're trying to give people treatment and programming. And like this kid here, 80% of the kids in drug rehab in California, drug rehab for marijuana. So before they get to that point, maybe we can channel them into a school project. Maybe they don't like sports, but maybe they like music. Maybe they like art or some other endeavor. In fact, we're trying to get the Arts Council to do a program in the Day Reporting Center, because that appeals to whether it's drama or it's art or it's music or it's acting. Some of our inmates, that appeals to them, and we even use equine therapy because horses are great animals, and we compel the inmates in the alternate sentencing programs they have to take care of the animals and the garden and learn some responsibility, trying to get people high school diplomas and things like that. So I would say yes, we're going to do everything we can.
At least take their names, because I know you guys have linked to like bonfires where the teenagers are drinking, you tell them just to try to put the fire out and kind of walk away. At least take their names, maybe you can kind of.
See, my perspective on, if kids are at a bonfire and they're drinking, a few of them are probably off the side, smoking, they could be smoking marijuana, they could be consuming alcoholic beverages. To me, that's a serious matter, and we can't let that happen. And in my perspective, and I think Sergeant Merrill's perspective would be that we don't, being lenient is not helping them in a situation like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Are you going to get more involved? At least take names down, sending people with okay.
Well, if I could, Sheriff, I'd like to follow up on, you mentioned it a few times already, and that is the community care team. And I'd like to kind of talk about that, and that's particularly why I invited Callum to be here, And also, I don't know, is Reverend Langston still here?
Let me check.
He gave up. So that's why Reverend Reagan here was invited. Excuse me. So, I want you to know that Alex Rivera, first of all, if you haven't heard, she's leaving, so it's a tremendous loss to the community. But one of the things that she and others at the Resource Center came together and did was start a community care team. And what the community care team does is it meets about once every 2 weeks, I believe it is. Or is it once a month?
Once a month.
Once a month. And we get various people from around the community, the various hospitals, mental health clinics, all the other players who deal with aspects of community health and et cetera, and people who have food insecurity and all of that. And what they do is we meet together, and Sheriff Lopi has been coming down on a regular basis all the way down from Eureka just to sit over with the rest of us and have a little lunch over there and talk about the cares of the community. So know that your resource center is a very vital thing right now, and we look at what our resource center is. It's like the first line of defense and the first line of help. So with that in mind, I wanted to turn it over to Caleb and let him talk a little bit about what this says to him as far as community health.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Caleb. During the day, I'm the operations officer for the Dunsmuir Clinic here, which I'm sure a lot of you go to. And as a part of the Dunsmuir Community Care Team, I'm here today just because there are a lot of these things can be based around mental health issues and things like that, and it is something that's been lacking in our communities. And I just wanted to say that with the team and the coalition that we put together, it is largely around mental health. And that is something that's really built in your community that was put together by the Resource Center. The Resource Center here, although it's only open the 3 days a week, it is very, very strong. And I recommend that if you do see individuals such as this and you can't get them in there they have different mental health referral programs to get sent, whether or not they're sending them to our clinic, which if somebody walks in there with a mental health issue, we'll guarantee you're being seen. If you're not, you can talk to me. But the different resources that are available in your community, they're there. We're working on getting as many big players in Dunsmuir as we can, because as Sheriff Lopi mentioned, and he himself is there along with the mayor, CPS is there, the Siskiyou County Mental Health is there. They have their drug and alcohol counselor person there.
Superintendent Hurd.
Yeah, the Principal Hurd's there from the schools, so there's also that talk in the community that is happening, and I'm really happy to see this as well. All of you community members coming together, because I know when we come together, it's a lot of how do we get the different aspects of the community together to solve some of these issues. And it's not just us as some of the, community leaders or the different, services that are offered in the area, but it is a lot to do with a lot of you, so thank you.
We will be leaving by 7:30, just to let you know, I promise you. Okay? So with that in mind, I want to ask you both a question because it's kind of on the border. I really did get a sense that there are people here who this is really affected. From your standpoint and from your standpoint, Reverend, if you would, what is available to people who are in that situation right now?
Sure, yeah. I think Sheriff Lopi hit the nail on the head with prevention. We started as a church in January something called Cascade Kids Club. Right now we're only able to manage kindergarten through 6th grade. We've had about 35 kids involved. They meet once a week and on a seasonal rotation. We just finished up doing a gymnastics program. April 5th we'll start martial arts. But they're not just coming for gymnastics, they're not just coming for martial arts. They're hearing a positive life message. We hope to instill a Christian morality into them, if nothing else. We don't want just them to be moral, but for the purposes of this conversation, that's definitely a goal. We would love to be able to expand that to make things available for our teens. We're just simply not there. We've seen tremendous growth in our church in the last year, but we're just not there yet in terms of volunteers, financial resources, and even space. I mean, you put 35 little kids in our basement, and there's not any room left for the teens. It's just really that simple. But that is something that we're working toward, is giving another positive outlet. I have 10 years experience as a youth minister prior to coming up here, and I can tell you, kids who are involved in church on a regular basis, the chances of them being involved in something like this are astronomically lower, and that's just reality. Beyond that, what's available for anybody that may have fears, anxieties, concerns, worries, just questions of why, frustration, anger, any of those kinds of things, I would personally make myself available to speak with you, to chat with you, to pray with you, just to listen. If you need somebody to yell at, pastors are great at listening to people yell at them. So if you just want to vent that frustration, we can take it. Brother Steve can attest to that as well. So any questions for me?
What's your phone number?
661. That's the area code. 578-3005.
We're going to see if we can help you out with some resources.
Great. Thanks, Sheriff.
So, Caleb, what would you say to anybody also from your standpoint, whether resources are available, somebody that would like some help with anxiety or fear or anything else from a more clinical standpoint?
Yeah, so of course incidents like this do create a fear in the community and can cause some anxiety from, just being in your own home. If you are feeling, anxious or have those sort of issues, you can see a counselor, whether or not it's at Siskiyou County Behavioral Health or at our clinic. We're in the process of adding more counselors now. It's kind of a big priority for us. So we are in a big recruitment stage. It is difficult to bring people to this area because we do have a lot of complicated, mental health issues in the area. So if anybody were to walk in the clinic today, and they would be seen, whether it be one of our medical providers, which medical providers do have a background in mental health, or a counselor themselves will make time, will pull aside. We have people and the resources. So. But partnering with you as well, everybody can come in, don't be afraid.
And so if they come in, they don't decide a doctor who's saying they're crazy just because they need help.
No.
I just want to be clear, going to get help and talking to somebody does not mean you've got a problem. It's something that's healthy to do. Mr. Keisler would like to now say a few words.
I want to say how proud I am of all you guys coming out here tonight. This is cool. This is our town, this is our community, and this is what it's about. These gentlemen have offered their assistance and the things that they do. I would like to put this out there. Next Tuesday I'm having a surgery, so I'm going to be down for a long time. But, so you got a week. Big Dave's Maintenance Services is offering free, along with the help of Sergeant Merrill. If you guys got a concern or you just want your house checked out, you'd be surprised what a little bit of WD-40 can do for a lock or a tighten a screw on a window jam. I put a screen door on that lady's house that got beat up. He just popped the window out. Popped the window out, reached in, opened the door. That simple. So, it was a $99 screen door. I can't punch through it. So if you guys would like, I'm available this next week. Like I said, you got 1 week to do this, so I can come out to your house, take a look, and it's simple things. These are things that we talk about in the neighborhood watch. If your hedges are too high in front of a window, I can get behind that hedge, I can take my time opening your windows. Yeah. It's stupid little things that make a difference.
Are you talking vinyl windows, the new kind?
I'm talking, if it's glass, I can get in it.
It's not glass, these are kind of security, double pane vinyl windows, the new kind.
Did she say it's a window and it's not glass? It's a glass.
It's a window.
Okay, so they're, if you guys want, like I said, me and Officer Merrill talked about it, and he probably got a lot more tips than I do, but I can give you tips on like locks, doors, bushes. So if you want, I'm available. So there, that's it.
We're going down the road.
Well,
Councilman Spurlock.
first off, my apologies. I came as quickly as I could from the fire academy. So I wasn't able to hear a good chunk of the conversation, but a lot of people reach out to me pretty frequently, whether it be text message, phone, email, social media. If there's anything I can ever do to help, please feel free to reach out. I have resources like Big Dave. If I can't help you, I can find someone who can help you.
He's also the one of the administrators of the Neighborhood Watch page. So if you have any questions about things, reach out to him, and he manages it along
I'll
with
connect with you.
Harley.
No, right in front of you. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, what's your name?
Yeah, I didn't catch your name.
You. Yeah, you. Castella lady. Yeah, you.
No, I'm Craig View.
Craig View lady.
Craig View.
What is your name?
Batman. Batman, you can't forget me.
Believe me, you just said that, I'll never forget that.
Okay, you done, Josh?
Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Sergeant Merrill, listen, before I say anything else, I want to make it very clear. I am very, very, very happy with the professionalism and the support that we get from our Sheriff's Department, and particularly from Sergeant Merrill. I spent, hold it. No, here it is. Give it up for Sergeant Merrill. I spent 22 years in the Navy, as I say a bunch of times, but I'll tell you, he's a professional, and we're lucky to have him here as we are to have the sheriff and his whole crew. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you would, Sergeant Merrill, don't make a fool of me and say some wise things now. It's your turn.
I'm afraid to open my mouth. I don't know what to say. It is important to be aware and understand the community. This is a singularly horrific event that sends ripples throughout a community, especially a community that is made up of mostly older folks. Unfortunately, our time is coming in our small little mountain community that we're starting to see things that have been affecting the nation for years and years, and as they creep closer and closer, at some point in time we have to start making adjustments in our lives, how we live, the people that we know around. We have to start learning more about the people around us and paying more attention rather than just simply enjoying the warmth of the sunshine when we do get it in the canyon. So we have to be different. And maybe there's no snow on the ground. We just have to be more. We just have to do that. We have to be more wise. We have to lock our cars. We have to keep those tools that can be used against us away where they're not so available. We have to maintain our houses. We have to pay attention to what's going on. Take an active role in our self-protection instead of simply believing it's just going to happen. When people are afraid, they often want to understand why things happen. We're a very logical group as people, and we believe things happen in some sort of a mathematical, systematic way. And the challenge that you will have is the same challenge that I have faced and any other law enforcement, mental health professional, religious person out of the house, is that there is no way to understand insanity. By its definition, it doesn't fit our normal thinking process. So don't try to understand how this might have occurred in a mathematical way because it can't be done. There are indicators that we see that tend to grow over years that time and time again pop up in these kind of events. If we begin to learn and recognize those events and be more mindful about those things that start developing, the relationship of the community can start hopefully preventing these things occurring by addressing those needs in smaller scale. The lady, oh I'm sorry, she left about, whether we're going to be more hard on kids and things like that. My answer is no. The children who walk around and hang out at the park and do those kind of things aren't responsible for the actions of this young man. He is. Does that mean that we're not going to be more mindful of those things? Absolutely. I'm not sure what happened with the party, what their kids are drinking, but that's not how we do business. If I catch your kids somewhere, they're either going to get a citation, I'm going to call you, or I'm going to call you and have you come pick up your kids. Your kids should be more afraid of you than they are of me, because you're the parent. My job as the sergeant and the law enforcement personnel is to support you as a parent, not to parent your kids. Although much of our activity is parenting for adults. They didn't listen for long. So there are a lot of similarities in the type of way that we address those community issues that parents do. So we support you in that. We're very much involved in the community. We look forward to, again, if you have issues or questions or concerns, please bring them to me. Allow me the opportunity to address them, seek out resources. I can't guarantee that every problem or issue you have, I'll have a solution. But if I don't know about it, I can't seek out sources, I can't seek out remedies. 188 out of 1,000 gardens, there's a lot of work out there. So for us, prioritizing those events that are most particular is the key for success. It's the only way that we can manage that. Without community support, without knowledge, without information, without sharing. Neighborhood watch meetings are the second Thursday of every month. April 12th will be our next.
That's when we'll do all the talking about
Here
neighborhoods and everything else. So come prepared with your passion and your knowledge and talk to folks.
And I say potluck.
And we'll do a potluck.
A lot of the information.
Our officer got called away in the last one I went to. He was there 10 minutes and he left, and it was like, okay, that's 2 cents.
It's true, yeah, and that was a couple months ago, but it did. There are times where either we're not able to attend, another officer, and because we are subject to calls, it can very much happen. Most of the time, we have the time that we need. We don't have a lot of time, but we use it as wisely as we can, addressing those issues. The Community Neighborhood Watch is very different than other ones that have formed because we understand that the value in that is an information sharing value that maybe questions can't ask and answer in a city council meeting. Maybe that's just not the structure. Maybe they feel comfortable in a large group. I speak with many people throughout the week who come to the office just to talk with me one-on-one because they don't want to ask questions in a group, and they can explain a lot of these things. I've had a lot of guests in my office this week about questions, concerns, and issues. And is that you chuckling back there? It was you. About coming to the office about this question, concerns. There are resources. Don't be afraid to come in. I'm not there all the time, but if you see it, the car, somebody's going to be there. Leave a note, call the office, I'll call back to you. There are resources, but you have to reach out to them. No matter how much information we provide or don't provide, there's always going to be a question. There's always going to be a comment, there's going to be a question. If it's simple as putting out those kind of things in the newspaper like you see from Mount Shasta Weed, and it helps reassure people, I'm sure we can figure out a way to do that with reasonableness. Maybe other things happen, there are ways. So it's up to you to be active, interested, involved, and seek out information. It's my responsibility to make sure that you have everything that I can offer in a reasonable way. The sheriff has been extremely kind and generous because the information that I was planning on giving you, not knowing he was going to come tonight, was much more restrictive than that. But when you're the sheriff, you get to do what you want. So he gets to do that. So, but that's an indication though of how much he understands the question, concerns, and involvement that he has and care for the community and the county and the people that he supports, which is you. So I said, it was kind of an amazing thing, but it just shows you that's the involvement level that we have. Are there any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, because I live on a pretty busy corner on
You do.
South First. And I heard you talking about kids should be in school. I'm out in my yard a lot, and I see these packs of kids go by, and I go, good morning, is it a school holiday? Oh no, we're homeschooled. So it's never entered my mind when I see them repeatedly that I should call someone. And I see them stand on the bridge and stop the cars and yell and scream at them, and I'm thinking, okay, they're homeschooled. I mean, should I call and report it to someone?
Yes,
or?
they should be at home doing schoolwork.
Well, I agree.
So there are a lot of alternate school programs rather than just the day ones. You know, there are a lot of seasonal timepieces. There are a lot of charter schools. There is a lot of ways of schooling option. My concern would be is if they're out up to seemingly no good when they should be home doing something else or helping out, and if that's an issue or concern that you're having with what's happening in your neighborhood, we need to know about it so that we can address it. Maybe it's just working out constructive opportunities. Hey, you've got a bunch of free time. I know some ladies who could use some hedges trimmed and finding those partnerships. There's those kind of opportunities.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure the captain gets a chance to say a brief word, and we've got the clock ticking down, but I know you've sat here the whole time. I appreciate it, sir. But before we leave, I'm going to take a moment to do a moment of silence for the victim. So please be respectful. We may go a couple minutes over, but I want to make sure we have a chance to do that, okay? So Captain, please take a moment to share your wisdom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's great to see everybody here tonight. Thanks for getting involved. Thanks for your interest in this. That's what's going to make the difference here is you guys getting involved. And the sheriff covered a lot of issues, a lot of concerns tonight. I'm sure there's more. So feel free, as the sheriff mentioned, you know, our communication lines are open. Contact Sergeant Merrow if you have any questions. We take an interest in Dunsmuir. We want to make sure that you guys are well taken care of. And I won't take any more time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, sir. With that in mind, With that in mind, I would like to thank the sheriff for everything you did tonight. I thought you did a wonderful job, and thank you very much for being here and for your support. And would like to clap for the...
And I have cards with my phone number on it. If you need a card before this thing's over, hit me up, or when it's over, hit me up.
Just one. Did you get your question?
He did not.
Oh, he had one question. I'll let you have your one question.
Hello, my name is Brian Rusty. Just about a year or two after I voted for you, I talked to you on the phone. I don't know if you remember or not, but we were talking about a community patrol car, and you said it might be possible. And I was wondering, I've tried to get it through. I've been trying to bring it up. He's heard me a couple times. I think I've been bringing it up now for like 4 years or something. And I was just seeing if there may be a retired police car, you know, we could get for a community watch car, and just park it like on South 1st Street once in a while. And little slow cars down. Might only slow until they find out, you know. But if we park it up like drug dealers' houses, just park it like maybe it would have been parked on Butterfly Avenue the other day. Would it make somebody change their mind if they see a black and white on this street tonight, over here tomorrow night, and other nights there's no black and whites in town at all? It could be just parked across from the sheriff's station, and just bump the car around here and there. You know, it might only save one speeder, or might make one person think twice or something, you know, but just trying to get in, like, I think, you know, for 4 years I've been trying to get a community patrol car here. And I can fix it up. I paint cars, I can paint the letters, tint the windows.
Yeah, we'll look into that, and that's a great idea. I appreciate that. And, before, I think we were talking about using it for neighborhood watch.
Please.
But we'll look into that. Great idea. Thank you. We'll
Okay, let's just take a moment of silence for the victim and what she's gone through and going through.
And God bless her.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Please show up at our next meeting. We need you. Thanks.